Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into a topic that might make some people a little uncomfortable, but it's so important to understand. We're talking about aggression.
That's right. We'll be exploring the insights of Robert Greene from his book, The Laws of Human Nature. Specifically, we'll be focusing on the chapter on aggression.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Aggression. That's a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Greene challenges that simple view. He argues that aggression is actually a much broader and more nuanced concept.
He does. It plays a role in almost every aspect of human interaction.
Really, almost every aspect.
Yeah.
Even the seemingly good and positive stuff.
Even then, Greene even says that aggression isn't just about those obvious things like, physical violence or angry outbursts.
So, it's not just about those stereotypical bad guys we see in movies.
Exactly. It goes so much deeper than that.
Deeper how? You mean example?
Okay, think about it this way. Greene says aggression is actually a fundamental human tendency, wired into our very nature. And get this, it's been essential for our survival as a species.
I've never really thought about it like that. Survival, huh?
Yep, without at least some degree of aggression, our ancestors wouldn't have been able to hunt for food or protect themselves from predators.
Or, compete for resources.
Exactly. It was essential for them to thrive and pass on their genes.
That makes sense, but it's still a bit unsettling to think of aggression as something that's, inherently a part of us.
I get that. But the thing is, aggression exists on a spectrum. We all fall somewhere on that spectrum, and it comes out in all sorts of ways.
So it's not just black and white, good or bad.
Right. Sometimes it's obvious and out in the open, like, when people get into a fight. But often it's much more subtle, like under the surface of everyday things.
Oh, okay. So give me an example of that. Like something we might encounter in our daily lives.
Okay, imagine you're stuck in traffic.
Right. Ugh, the worst.
And that person in front of you is driving super slow. You're late, you're frustrated, you just want to lay on the horn, even though deep down you know it's not going to make the cars move any faster.
Oh my gosh, yes. I feel that urge all the time.
Right, that urge, that impulse, that's aggression. It's about asserting yourself, trying to control your environment, even if it's just in a small way.
Wow, I never really thought of it like that, but that makes so much sense.
And now imagine someone who feels that impulse a lot in lots of different situations. That's where we start to see what Greene calls a chronic aggressor.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So are these chronic aggressors like the people who are always picking fights or starting arguments? Those loud, angry types?
Not always. Some might be, sure. But a lot of them are much sneakier about it. They use these subtle tactics to try and get power and control over others.
Okay, now that's starting to sound a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
How can we spot these folks before they, do their thing?
Well, you got to look for patterns. It's not just about one-off things. Do they always seem to blame others for their problems? Do they constantly play the victim? Or always try to dominate the conversation, like putting down other people's opinions?
Those are definitely red flags, like warning signs that you might be dealing with someone who doesn't have a healthy way of handling their aggression.
Right. And this brings us to a really sneaky form of aggression. Greene calls it passive aggression.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's like they're being hostile, but indirectly, like through manipulation.
Exactly. It's all about underhanded tactics. And you know what? You've probably encountered this more than you realize.
Oh, for sure. Everyone knows at least one person who's passive-aggressive.
Yeah.
They're experts at pushing your buttons, but never actually, confronting you directly. It's so frustrating.
And confusing, right? Because you start to wonder, am I overreacting? Is this even real?
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what's so sneaky about it. It makes you doubt yourself.
Greene actually outlines a bunch of strategies that passive-aggressive people use, and I bet as we go through them, you'll recognize some of these moves.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's expose these sneaky tactics.
All right. So, first up, we have the subtle superiority play. Think about that friend who's always late.
Oh, yeah. I have a friend like that. Always has a perfectly good excuse, too.
Right. Making you feel like you're being unreasonable for expecting them to be on time. They act as if their time is, way more valuable than yours.
Oh, it's so annoying.
And that's just one of the many ways they do it. Then there's the sympathy bait. That's where someone constantly plays the victim, pulling you into their drama, and basically draining you with their never-ending problems.
Oh, I know that type, too. Always trying to make you feel sorry for them.
And then what happens? You end up feeling like you have to help, even if it means neglecting your own stuff.
It's exhausting. I've been there.
And guess what? It's often a totally calculated move. They're trying to control and manipulate your feelings.
Wow. Okay. What else? What other tricks do they have up their sleeve?
Oh, there are plenty. There's the dependency trap. Someone starts off super helpful, almost too helpful.
I can see where this is going. They do you all these favors, so you owe them.
Exactly. And then, when you don't do what they want, they turn cold and act like you've betrayed them.
It's like they're playing this game, and you don't even know the rules.
And here's another move to watch out for: the insinuating doubt tactic. This is where they'll use backhanded compliments and these little digs to try and make you feel less confident. Like, oh, you did a good job on that presentation considering you weren't feeling well.
Ugh. Those backhanded compliments are the worst.
Yeah.
Like, is that a compliment, or are you trying to put me down?
Right. They leave you feeling worse, not better.
What's the point of even saying anything nice then?
The goal is to make you doubt yourself, to undermine your confidence. And then, of course, there's the classic blame shifting. You try to talk about a problem, and suddenly they twist things around.
So you end up feeling guilty.
Yep. They're masters at making you feel like it's all your fault.
It's infuriating.
I know, it can be, especially if you're not aware of what's going on. And finally, we have the passive tyrant. This is often someone in a position of power, like a boss or sometimes even a parent, who overwhelms you with demands. They create this constant feeling of urgency and pressure.
So you end up feeling inadequate.
Right. It's like they set you up to fail.
This is a lot to take in. It's kind of unsettling to realize how common passive aggression is.
I know, right? It's like this whole secret language of manipulation that most people aren't even aware of.
Well, now I feel like I have a decoder ring or something.
That's the whole point. The more you understand these strategies, the better you'll be able to spot them. And that can make a huge difference in your life.
Totally. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to keep learning and growing. So before we dive into controlled aggression, I think we need to address something.
What's that?
Well, some people might be a little worried about the whole idea of embracing aggression, right? I mean, doesn't that seem a little, well, dangerous?
Yeah, I can see why someone might think that, especially after all the stuff we just talked about. All those negative ways aggression can show up.
Right. So it's super important to be clear about what we mean here. There's a big difference between just plain aggression and what Green calls controlled aggression.
Okay, yeah, break that down for me. What's the difference?
Well, think of it like this. Plain old aggression is kind of like that raw, untamed energy. It can be really destructive, like a wildfire. But controlled aggression, that's about harnessing that fire, using it in a strategic way, ethically.
Ah, I see. So it's not about just letting your anger loose and doing whatever you want.
Exactly. Green is definitely not saying, hey, go out there and be ruthless and get what you want no matter who you hurt. It's not a might makes right kind of thing.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Because that would be kind of scary.
Yeah.
So if it's not about being ruthless, what is it about?
It's about using your assertive energy, yes. But it's about using it to achieve your goals in a way that doesn't harm others. It has to be grounded in reality.
And you said something about ethics before, too.
Oh, absolutely. Controlled aggression, it needs to be guided by a strong moral compass. You got to think things through carefully and always consider what's right and wrong.
Got it. So how do we actually do this? How do we cultivate that controlled aggression without, letting it get out of control?
It starts with knowing yourself. You got to figure out what your triggers are, What are those situations or maybe even specific people that make you feel those aggressive urges?
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
like if you know that you tend to get aggressive when you're super stressed out, you could maybe make a plan to step back from those situations for a bit.
Exactly. Like, take a few deep breaths, calm down a little before you react. It's all about creating that little space, that pause between the urge and the action.
Create that pause button. I like it.
Right. Now, Green also talks about channeling your aggression
Channeling it like where?
towards specific goals. You got to have a clear vision of what you want. What are you aiming for? Then you use that energy to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential.
I love that. So it's like taking that wild, untamed energy and focusing it like almost like a laser beam on something you're passionate about.
Exactly. It's like fuel for your dreams, your
Yeah.
aspirations, all that good stuff. But here's where it gets really interesting. Green says even anger, which we usually think of as a bad thing, can actually be part of this controlled aggression.
Wait, anger? Hold on. Isn't anger something we should try to avoid? Like just squash it down and pretend it's not there?
Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, if your anger is out of control, that's definitely a problem. It can lead to some bad decisions and hurt people. But Green's saying that anger, when you use it in the right way, can actually be a powerful motivator.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm following you here. How can anger be a good thing?
Think about all those social movements in history. The ones that fought for equality, for justice, a lot of them were fueled by anger, a righteous anger, like a deep sense of injustice, a burning desire to make things right.
Ah, I see what you mean. So it's not about denying that anger, but using it to create change.
Precisely. It's about taking that raw emotion and making it work for you, for something positive.
This is starting to feel pretty empowering. But I gotta admit, it's still hard for me to see anger as a good thing. Like most of us are taught that anger is bad, it's destructive.
I get it. It's like we've been conditioned to think that way. But emotions aren't inherently good or bad. It's what we do with them that matters.
So instead of bottling it up, we should figure out how to use it.
Right. Direct it towards something constructive. Let's say you're really angry about some kind of social injustice.
Okay.
Well, instead of just letting that anger eat away at you or, exploding at someone, you could channel that energy. Like maybe you volunteer for an organization that's fighting for that cause, or you write to your representatives, or even organize a peaceful protest.
Right. Turn that anger into action. Make it count for something.
Exactly. You're transforming it into something positive and productive. And this brings us to another piece of controlled aggression: persistence.
Okay. So persistence. Isn't that just about not giving up?
Well, yeah, kind of, but it's more than that. It's about having this drive, this relentless push to keep going, even when you hit a wall, when things get tough, when people tell you you can't do it.
It's that grit, that inner strength that helps you keep pushing forward.
Exactly. And you got to tap into that strength, that determination to overcome challenges. That's what gets you to your goals.
Love it. So we've got the channeling, the persistence. What else is there to this controlled aggression thing?
Well, Green also talks about the role of fear. He says being fearless is really important when it comes to channeling our assertive energy effectively.
Okay, but how do you just become fearless? I mean, fear is a pretty powerful emotion, right? It's supposed to keep us safe.
Right, there's definitely healthy fear that protects us, but there's also that kind of fear that paralyzes you, that holds you back, keeps you from going after what you want.
I know what you mean. That fear of failure, of rejection, of like putting yourself out there.
Exactly. And Green thinks that overcoming those fears starts with believing in yourself.
So like believing in your own worth, in your abilities, in your dreams.
Exactly. If you believe in yourself and what you're doing, you'll be more likely to stand up for yourself, to take risks, to not give up when things get hard.
I'm really liking this whole idea of controlled aggression. It feels really empowering.
It is. It's like we're taking back our power, right? Using our strength for something good, not just for ourselves, but for others too.
Right. It's not about being selfish or greedy.
Exactly. It's about making the world a better place. But remember, controlled aggression isn't about becoming a lone wolf. It's not about ignoring rules or being unkind to others.
So it's still about working together, being part of a community.
Exactly. It's about using your assertive energy to create positive change, both in your own life and in the world around you.
So it's about finding that balance, that sweet spot between being ambitious and being responsible.
Right, and that's where ethics come in. You got to have that moral compass, treat people with respect, even when you're standing up for yourself or going after what you want. Be fair, be just.
So basically be assertive, not aggressive.
Yes. Have the courage to speak your mind, set boundaries, go after your dreams. But do it in a way that's kind and respectful.
I like that.
And there's one more thing. You have to be smart about it, too. You have to know when to stand your ground and when to just let things go. Green calls this discernment.
So it's not about picking a fight every time someone disagrees with you.
Right. It's not about winning every little argument. It's about knowing which battles are actually worth fighting.
Save your energy for the stuff that really matters.
Exactly. Be strategic. Don't let your anger, your frustration control you. Make choices that line up with your values, with the kind of person you want to be, with the kind of world you want to live in.
This whole idea of controlled aggression is really fascinating. It's definitely making me think about how I handle my own, aggressive side. But, we've been focusing a lot on how to manage our own aggression. What about when we're on the receiving end of it? Like, what do you do when someone's being aggressive towards you?
That's a great question. And it's a perfect segue into our next topic. We're going to dive into some practical strategies for dealing with aggression from others.
Welcome back to our deep dive. So we've covered a lot of ground, from those sneaky passive-aggressive tactics to the idea of actually using aggression as, like, a force for good.
Right. And now, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit. Green talks about these myths, these stories we often tell ourselves about aggression.
Myths. Like, what? Give me an example.
Well, one big one is this idea that humans were, naturally peaceful at some point, like way back in the day. We were all living in harmony, and then bam, civilization messed everything up.
Oh, right. The whole noble savage idea. Like, we're all just innocent and pure until society corrupted us.
Exactly. It's a nice thought, but not really accurate.
Yeah, I remember from my anthropology classes, even those really early humans, way back, they were already fighting and stuff.
Exactly. Conflict seems to be kind of baked into being human. And another myth is this idea that we're, like, evolving past aggression.
Yeah.
That we're getting more peaceful as time goes on.
Oh, yeah. Like, as a species, we're becoming more enlightened.
Right. It's kind of a comforting thought. Gives us hope for the future, right? But honestly, if we look around, it doesn't really hold up.
I see what you mean. I mean, we're still dealing with wars and violence all over the place. And even on a personal level, people are still fighting. Social media is like this breeding ground for aggression.
Totally. It's like this weird paradox. Technology connects us, but it also gives us all these new ways to be aggressive towards each other.
So what's Green's point with all this? Is he saying we're just stuck with aggression? Like, it's hopeless?
No, not at all. He's not saying we're all doomed to be violent. He's just saying we got to be real about human nature. We have this potential for good, yes, but also we have the potential to do bad things.
So it's kind of like this double-edged sword. We have this capacity for aggression, but we get to choose how to use it.
Right, and that brings us right back to controlled aggression. It's not about pretending that part of us doesn't exist. It's about managing it, channeling it, making it work for us, not against us.
It reminds me of that saying, like, fire is a good servant but a bad master.
Perfect analogy. Aggression is kind of like that. We can use it to create or to destroy. It's our choice. We have that responsibility.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. I know I've learned a lot about aggression, like way more than I thought I would.
Me too. Green really makes you think.
He does. And I hope our listeners got something out of it too. Maybe it'll even spark some more conversations about this important topic.
I hope so. We all have to figure out how to navigate this world together, right? And understanding aggression, both our own and other people's, is a big part of that.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.